Welcome. I am Dr. Onyekachi Chukwu. In this video, we're going to be covering understanding renewable natural resources under the course FOW 211, Introduction to Forest Resources Management. I would want you to sit tight and listen carefully as we go gradually. Okay, let me share my slide. Thank you. Like I mentioned before, we will be talking on the topic understanding renewable natural resources. And to start with, let's understand what natural resources are. Natural resources refers to materials or substances that exist in the natural environment and are valuable to human and other organisms. So everything that occurs naturally are termed as natural resources. Based on their ability to replenish over time, they are classified into two: renewable and non-renewable natural resources. And let's start with the non-renewable natural resources. Non-renewable natural resources are finite resources that cannot be replenished within a human time frame or are replenished extremely slow. So these resources that cannot be replenished or replenished extremely slow are termed as non-renewable natural resources. For instance, our fossil fuel like our petrol, our crude oil, our coal, and so on, our fossil fuels are example of non-renewable natural resources. For instance, our minerals like our gold, tin, iron, and so on and so forth are also example of non-renewable natural resource. Some of our energy source like the nuclear energy are also termed as example of non-renewable natural energy source energies. Now let's talk about renewable natural resources, which is a focus for this particular lecture. Renewable natural resources are resources that can replenish naturally or through human intervention within relative short period. For instance, our plants and animals, such as our forests, trees, um, fish, wildlife, these are examples of renewable natural resources. They are renewable natural resources because they can regenerate themselves. They can regenerate either, for instance, in terms of the trees, they can regenerate either artificially or naturally. Okay, but of course, their ability to regenerate classify them under the renewable natural resources like our fish, our wildlife, of course, water, which includes our rivers, our lakes, our underground water. They are also termed as renewable natural resources. Air and wind used to generate wind energy. They are also renewable natural resources because they renew naturally. Our solar energy, which the main source is from the sunlight, is a renewable energy. It doesn't finish, it replenishes naturally. Then we'll talk of soil, which is essential for agriculture and forestry. It's also a renewable natural resource because it renews. Now, let's look at forests as renewable natural resource. Forests, like I said, wildlife and fishes can continue to reproduce and regenerate their population as long as environmental conditions remain favorable and an adequate seed source or breeding stock is maintained. Looking at forests as renewable natural resources, some of the reasons are: one, it regenerates, it supports biodiversity, it sequesters carbon, it provides ecosystem services, and is also source of livelihood, especially for people living around the forest and even people outside the forest ecosystem. Now, let's bring it back home to forestry and wildlife. What is a forest? When we talk of forest, what is a forest? Forest means different things to different people. When you talk about forests, some people in their mind, the first thing that comes to their mind is impediment for development. Anything forest is something that stops development, something that hinders development. Some people, immediately you mention forest, the first thing that comes to their mind is that forest is a home for the dead, is a home for evil spirits. It's any kind of diabolic things are attributed to the forest. And of course, these are mites. Another thing forests mean to other people is when you mention forests, they see it as a sign of underdevelopment, as backwardness. Some people see forests as a place of fear and mystery. Some people see forests as habitat for dangerous animals. And some people associate forests to negativity. However, according to Oxford Dictionary, forest is a large area covered chiefly with trees and undergrowth. According to FAO and UN, forest, they say, is an area of land spanning more than 0.05 hectares with tree crown cover or equivalent stocking level of more than 10% with trees with the potential of reaching minimum height of 2 to 5 meters at maturity in situ. This is what FAO define forest as. And of course, we got the word forestry from forest, which is defined as the art, science, and practice of studying and managing forested land, plantations, and associated natural resources such as water and wasteland, harvesting timber and non-timber resources, conservation, recreation, and other purposes. Of course, we understand that the term forestry has been defined severally by different authors, but we're going to stick to this particular definition because of this lecture. Forestry also involves the production, which is planting and maintenance, the distribution and consumption of forest products and services. And on the other hand, wildlife, this refers to all non-domesticated plants and animals other than and other organisms. When you talk of wildlife before now, people just attribute wildlife to only animal. But I'm here to tell you today that wildlife is all non-domesticated plants, animals, and other organisms. According to Nigerian Conservation Foundation in 1965, they defined wildlife as all living things, plants, invertebrate and vertebrate animals outside the direct control of man. I want you to underline the word direct control of man, outside the direct control of man. That is non-cultivated plants or non-domesticated animal. So, having understood the difference or the definition of forestry and wildlife, let's now look at the importance of forests. Forests provides food and timber for us as human. It provides food and timber. It's also habitat for wildlife. Forest houses several wildlife from the lower ones to the higher ones. It provides home for all wild and for large range of wild animals, including birds, including mammals, including amphibians, and so on and so forth. Uh, Forests also provide center for biodiversity conservation. Forests conserve biodiversity, carbon sequestration, and climate regulation. Forest is also important because it helps in carbon sequestration and regulate our climate. Forest provides oxygen that we take in, and also in return takes in the carbon dioxide, which is harmful to the environment. Forests also help in water cycle regulations through erosion control. Forests provide erosion control both in terms of wind erosion and water erosion. Forest protects our soil and helps in the nutrient cycling. Also, forests provide air and water quality improvement. Forest also provides us with recreation and cultural values, religious and spiritual values, and so on and so forth. So the list goes on and on and on. And of course, this lecture with this lecture, I believe that you can tell us what forest is. You can differentiate between forest, forestry, and wildlife. You can also differentiate between natural resources, and you can differentiate between renewable and non-renewable natural resources. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening, and we're going to continue in the next video. Thank you, and see you next time.